All right, there we go.
Big news.
Big news.
You woke me from my slumber. I'm barely even awake, so bear with me.
You woke up in an alternate universe.
This is some other timeline.
Dude, this is big news.
We went to bed last night watching WrestleMania. Shout out Roman Reigns, still the WWE Universal Champion over Cody Rhodes. I'm surprised they didn't give it to Cody.
Me too.
But I wonder if it has something to do with the bigger news, and if the company that is now involved in everything kind of wanted Roman to have that title and be the flag bearer going into this next step.
This new era.
Because he is a lot more known than Cody is. As much as we like Rhodes, and Rhodes has had a hell of a resurgence the last last year in the WWE, but even had a hell of a run in AEW, I thought. Had a better run now as he's come back to WWE. But he's not known mainstream like Roman Reigns is. So
Roman Reigns is such a big face. And for such a long time.
Yeah, for a long time. So the news.
The merger.
The WWE
and the UFC are becoming one.
Are now one company. So one large entertainment conglomerate.
Under Endeavor Group.
No, that's what you said last time.
No, Embracer.
Right, Endeavor Group. That's right, 9 billion.
They got the WWE for, and it's 12.2 or 12.4 for the UFC.
So that's, and it's going to be publicly traded, it sounds like, which the UFC isn't, the WWE is. So there's obviously going to be something going on Wall Street. But I mean, they're both touring companies. They're both major media companies. So they know how to do that. They're used to doing the press conferences. They obviously draw a lot of live fans. So they know how to do all the audience engagement and all that. They are kind of in similar type of industries.
If you think of it, they're in a ring, octagon, they're kind of in there, there's two guys, or well, I guess wrestling, there's multiple guys that can come out, but it's almost in the same aspect, the same sport. You're still in a fighting kind of a thing.
It is and it isn't.
It's still entertainment, I should be.
It is and it isn't, right? So it's like, it would be somewhat similar to if the NBA bought Cirque du Soleil. Like, you still have an entertainment aspect to one. And while basketball is entertainment, while the UFC is entertainment, I think we all still look at it as competitive sport that we just derive a lot of entertainment from, hence the reason it's the most popular sport, right? Or one of the most popular. Whereas the WWE obviously is scripted. It's incredibly athletic. There's tons of talent involved.
They were saying merging the both companies, they have over 1 billion viewers. They were saying
it's massive.
Merging, that's crazy.
So Fight Pass is UFC's own little doodad, but the WWE doesn't have WWE Network anymore. They moved all their stuff over to Peacock, and then Peacock kind of residually went back through the WWE's catalog and scrubbed a lot of stuff out of it. Not stuff that they'd lost licenses to or things they don't want to pay royalties for, like a lot of the entrance music or like the WCW entrance music or any of that. But they scrubbed a lot of content back, especially from the Attitude Era, where it's a little salacious. Like, it's very much TV-14. It's not PG TV. So I wonder if, since the UFC is a company basically born and bred off the back of people getting their brains beat in, if they're willing to go back and re-implement all the TNA that they took out of the WWE content from the old stuff when they go, because obviously their streaming is going to get together at some point.
Oh, obviously, yeah. No, I don't know what. I believe all that content would be.
I don't know what the contract is that the WWE has with NBC to have it on Peacock right now, but I don't imagine it's a lifetime deal.
No, probably not.
Because the NBC and the UFC aren't in any kind of business together, as far as I know.
As far as I know, no.
So
no.
I don't imagine the loyalty is going to remain there for long. I imagine NBC had the opportunity to buy the WWE, because we heard the WWE. We never heard the WWE and the UFC together.
No, but there's always rumors of being sold.
Oh, we've heard tons of WWE was up for sale, and we saw that the UFC sold from Zuffa, from the Fertitta brothers. Was that 5 years ago now? 6 years ago?
Something like that.
A couple years before the pandemic. And that was a pretty large group of investors that got involved in that. And clearly they have the same modus operandi for how they want to operate the UFC, because we haven't seen the top brass change. Dana's obviously still your figurehead. So they didn't buy in and then figure like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to try to reinvent the wheel. They're like, no, this is already working.
This works.
Because like Dana pimp slapped the old lady and he was fine like a month later.
Nothing happened.
He doesn't. Yeah, you can't touch somebody who don't care to be touched that much.
Right. No, exactly. He's nobody to answer to.
He's got nobody to answer to. Right.
Now it's probably a little different though. Now it's going to be a publicly traded company though now.
Well, but Vince has been Vince for a long time too, and that's been a publicly traded company. Vince is Vince. Yeah. Right? These are still some guys that are born and bred in the old fashioned.
I like the old fashioned.
I like the old fat. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're excellent. I love Vince McMahon. I love Dana White.
Yeah, that old there.
I'm interested to see what.
So interested.
I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see.
Endless.
I'm interested to see a press conference about this with Vince and Trips and Dana White. Like, I'm interested to see and isn't Rock a part owner of the UFC? So he owns like a part of a percent, right? So wouldn't The Rock in theory now be part owner of the WWE?
He does. That's very true.
Right?
Yep.
So it's interesting. The Weeknd, I think, owns a little bit of the UFC. I think Drake might own a little bit of the UFC.
Drake.
There's a lot of people that own little pieces. Because I remember when they sold from Zuffa, that a lot of like
Zuffa
was the Fertitas company. That's the guy. SEG had it at first. That was the guys that ran it in the early 90s, right? Like from 93 through until the early 2000s.
So I was just trying to think who owned it before.
Fertitta Brothers.
Fertitta Brothers. Yeah. Zuffa.
Yeah, Zuffa Entertainment. Yeah.
Because I was like, the Fertitta Brothers, they sounded familiar, but I didn't know what the... As soon as I heard the name of the company, then I fucking...
I'm trying to think about... is it Frank? Frank Fertitta and Lorenzo. Lorenzo was the one that everybody saw with Dana all the time. Frank was the other brother, the older brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they both always in good shape though. But they were MMA guys though. They weren't just casino moguls. They were guys who liked training. Like they're guys a little older than Dana is now, right? Because Dana's what?
45?
No, Dana's got to be in his early 50s.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I got to think Dana's probably
right?
50. The Fertitta's probably a decade older than Dana, but like we're always guys that look like they train. So they clearly, it was a bit of a passion project when they got into it. Because I've seen some of the stuff where Dana's talked about trying to convince them when SEG was actually selling the UFC, when they were basically going out of business, right, in the early 2000s.
Yeah, right.
And Dana like knew them from... again, I could be telling this story incorrectly, so people could go and check, but I'm pretty sure Dana was a boxing coach at a gym in Vegas. And that's how Dana got involved with the Fertittas, was he was somebody that was doing, I want to say like aerobics classes or something with guys. Yeah, because he's not, he was literally like that's how he came up. Like it was just connections. He just knew the right guy.
Networking,
and was spitting game. Like the guy had an idea. He saw this opportunity for this business.
And he took it.
These guys were worth hundreds of millions. This business was only going to be a couple million to get involved in. Yeah. It was it was a new endeavor for them because obviously they're in casino business, but everybody in the casino business, I imagine, especially in Vegas, you kind of want to be in the entertainment business at some point.
Right, you get entertainment, but yeah, you want something
sure
else.
Worked out for them. I would imagine the Fertittas made billions in that deal when they sold it a few years ago.
Oh, you would imagine so, billions.
So they never changed anything. So from that...
As of right, this just happened.
But they haven't changed anything in the 5 years or whatever that it's been changed over from Zuffa. So I got to imagine the guys that are involved in it, because it sounds more like the UFC was the one that kind of absorbed the WWE. Isn't that what this sounds like?
Well, it said the WWE agrees to merge with the UFC. So with the UFC, it sounds like they're just merging together.
So they're right.
I don't think there's one dominant thing than the other.
Well, the UFC is going to have to pay out all the shareholders because, I mean, you're going to have to get shares. So there's going to have to be a stock buyback, right? So there's going to have to be something worked out financial. But they've obviously worked that out. They're going to pay everybody a premium on the share price.
51% of the company of WWE.
That's what it is.
51% of the owner.
Right, and they kept Vince McMahon on, even they said.
Yes, he's still there.
Roman Reigns still the champ. The WWE and the UFC have
got some crossovers.
Have come together. Do we want to see that though?
I think we do.
Do we though? Do we? When we sit here right now and we say that, I know that we're on some little bit of a vibe because this just happened.
Right.
So like, just do the vibe check. Be like, okay, that's there, but 8 months from now, 3 years from now, are you going to start to sully, in your opinion, of mixed martial arts as competitive sports as if they've been peppering WWE characters throughout it for the last couple of years? You're going to start to look at it that way. And the UFC guys can't go to the WWE because they're too real. See, that was the problem. Brock was a great anomaly, right? Even Bobby Lashley, excellent little anomaly where you could bring a guy, but you can't justify beating him. You bring in 10 professional fighters that are active pro fighters you're going to bring guys that are somewhat ranked because you're going to try to bring guys with somewhat name value. How do you now beat them with the Usos?
Yes.
And try to get me to believe that?
I see that. No, I see exactly what you mean. As soon as you start doing that, the kayfabe or whatever's gone.
You don't want to muddy the water.
You don't.
And you don't want kayfabe to start leaking over into the UFC.
No.
Because we want everybody to always think that that's as legitimate as possible.
Okay,
even though there's lots of kayfabe already there.
Okay, maybe you don't do it like that. Maybe you do it like you have a wrestling match, then you have a fucking cage match or an MMA match in between at some sort of conglomerate WrestleMania UFC event.
I would imagine they might do a little bit of like crossover events that like one leads into the next on like a show, or I could see that where they use one as the feeder to the other audience wise. Because I do think there is still a big separation. Because I would imagine like I might be the anomaly somewhat because you don't really watch wrestling and I still watch a lot of old wrestling.
Yeah.
But I'm an extremely large MMA fan and have been since the 90s. Like have like watched UFC 1 on pay-per-view and like have been a fan of, seen it all, every WEC event, every Pride event, every Dream at Sengoku. You go back through the early 2000s, through the boom in the late 2000s with Strikeforce and Elite XC and all. Watched it all, seen all of it. But I don't look down on the WWE like a lot of UFC fans do. And I think a lot of WWE fans, dorkier ones, the ones that are a little bit more, they are a little intimidated by the brutality, the legitimate brutality, because there's a lot of alpha maleness in the UFC, even more so than wrestling.
I would say the realism.
I think I think maybe this would be good for both audiences to realize that actually both of these products, while somewhat similar, maybe on its face, they are distinctly unique and they are both really entertaining at their core. Like, it's okay to be a UFC fan and to think, I like legitimate sport. But you wouldn't call Shakespeare fake. Pro wrestling is like live, where you're reacting to a crowd. You're moving at full speed, jumping, diving, catching guys, leveraging extreme amounts of weight, things coming from all angles. Like it's an amazing pageantry of athleticism.
Oh, definitely it is,
and it deserves respect. And I think that would be a good thing, is if the two audiences found kind of a melding there and realized that the WWE and pro wrestling are excellent for what they do. If you're just in the mood for some Jerry Springer mixed with UFC, the WWE is great for it, because you don't have to put too much stock into it. It's just there to entertain you. You can lose yourself, laugh, get mad, not care, turn it off, walk away. But the UFC is very rank specific. Everything matters. There's all these rules. There's all this specificity.
That's why Endeavor Group is probably that's why they merged, and maybe they are trying to bring those two kind of divided groups together.
I don't know if they could do it, because I think
it's some sort of middle ground.
I don't know if they can do it, because I think the sentiment in these communities is a pretty organically grown one that really happened from the base. Because like I said, I've been there for both of them. I've been there from the advent because I'm old as balls. So I've been there from the advent of the internet with wrestling message boards going all the way back to the late 90s, and spoilers for, Monday Night Raw and Nitro and all that stuff. And I've been there for the advent of SureDog and all these other message board sites for MMA. And there is a very large divide between these two communities that don't really... There's a real large divide, especially from the MMA towards the wrestling community. There's a real looking down its nose sort of a thing. And that's fine. I get it, because a lot of people take their shit super serious. But maybe this will allow it to ingratiate them to people now, because they don't look at it as competition. They look at it as a derivative. It's like if you really like Star Wars, but during Star Wars, they show you a preview of some Pixar stuff. Well, Pixar is Disney as well, right?
Yes.
Right. And you're not into Pixar stuff, but you're into Star Wars. But then before the Star Wars movie, you see a really cool commercial for a Pixar movie, and then you go see it. Because you're like, I like this. The Star Wars guys are good. The same guys do this, or guys related to these guys, same studio, da-da-da-da-da. So I hope that does happen. I hope these fan bases can find common ground and realize that both of these, one sport and one art, are fucking awesome.
Well, I think Endeavor Group is going to do it.
Awesome.
I think they're going to bring it
It's
together.
great.
Yeah.
Like I love...
Future is bright for the two companies.
What does AEW do from here? That's AEW purchased by Bellator in how long?
Or PFL.
Or PFL.
Paramount, right? Because what network are they on? They're not. They're just on. Are they on YouTube or what? Turner. Okay.
Who you're talking about? AEW.
AEW.
They're on TNT. They're Turner.
Yeah, Turner.
So I don't know what's that's Time Warner.
Time Warner.
That's Time Warner.
Warner Brothers.
Right.
They're the merger of that.
But Paramount is Bellator. No, Paramount is PFL.
Right.
Bellator is.
I don't
Bellator
know.
is Showtime, I think.
Okay, and
I think Bellator is Showtime.
I don't know who owns Showtime.
It's I think Showtime. I don't know. Showtime.
That might be HBO. That might be Warner Brothers.
It may be. Yeah, fuck. Who
Showtime
knows?
Might be Warner
We'll
Brothers.
see what happens.
Yeah,
but I imagine AEW is the one that's probably. They're lucky they've got so much money with Khan.
Right.
Because, I mean, Bellator's not going anywhere. PFL, obviously, you can see by the amount of money that they have, and we talked about this when we were watching PFL the other night.
Yeah.
You can see but not just the amount of money that they put out with these fighters with every season, like $6 million in prize money at the end of the year,
right.
But that they don't still have the best fighters, that the money's clearly there because they're building for the future. So there's clearly a front-loaded amount of money that's just a write-off. It's a loss-leading department for a much larger media conglomerate, and they're fine with just serving it money until it gets on its feet and it's totally sustainable by itself. Because I would imagine Bellator is somewhat near that level even now. Because Bellator,
probably getting there.
When Bellator started, like 2010, 2011, Bellator didn't have nobody. Toby Amata, Jorge Masvidal with that Lombard, they didn't have anybody, right? Now, I mean, they've got some decent guys. Phil Davis is over there, Bader's over there.
There's quite a few people.
There's quite a few people over there in Bellator. People do choose to make careers out of being Bellator professional fighters rather than going to the UFC, right? It's not always, but Bellator does have some prestige now, definitely. They are the number 2 without
doubt. They're definitely a name that's known.
But AEW is the number 2 without doubt. But AEW now, they don't have a dance partner.
No.
And we didn't realize this was going to be a dance because, like, wrestling from ever. Anytime you ever think of professional wrestling, you go back to the territory days, the war in Georgia from the early 1970s. You go through people fighting over any territory. There's been territory wars in the Northeast. There's been territory wars in Texas. There's never been where there was this outside other major player company. It was always wrestling companies against each other. And it was always WCW, ECW, the WWE against each other. And maybe they would team up with each other and go up against one of them. But now, AEW doesn't have, and this is a dance partner from a whole other stratosphere.
Yeah, I know it's going to be a very interesting ride.
But Tony Khan's got a lot of money and knows a lot of people.
For sure, but the merger...
I mean, you got to think, the people who own AEW own an NFL team. So, I mean, right? That's still pretty prestigious.
That is.
But AEW, the move is in your court because you are absolutely the number 2. And we talked about this the other day, and I know a lot of people might not be able to see the scope of it, but if you think about it, MMA, the transition between being on the top and being on the bottom for most guys, not John Jones and Fedor, but most guys, is relatively quick. Your ascent happens over the course of a few years. Your descent happens over the course of a few years. That takes place with a good majority of MMA guys. They peak, they fucking plateau, and they seem to valley. And there's a very...
You've seen it time and time again.
There's a very rare occurrence where guys... So you could have Bellator, as long as they've got a lot of prospects in all divisions, in theory, over a fairly small window, get a good amount of market share on the UFC because they could just develop the talent lucky. Because you don't know at 20, the guy at 20 who's going to be what at 25. You can have an idea, but one injury, one setback, or the right training partner, or the right fight, or the right life experience, who knows, can set you on the right or wrong trajectory. So those things could change. So Bellator could become, but there's nothing in AEW's thing that's going to make them the number 1. They don't have where they're all of a sudden going to do, because they don't have a track record of ever being able to develop anybody.
No, but with their track record or their gimmicks or anything like that,
would you say they developed MJF, or he came in with that talent and they just took the leash off?
With that talent.
Would you say that the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Adam Page, John Moxley, Chris Jericho, would you say any of them have gotten better in AEW or have gotten actually notably worse compared to their best work in their careers?
Probably noticeably worse.
AEW better find themselves a dance partner.
Yeah, they need to find themselves
because they're burning money over there and they are notably number 2 with no prospect of ascent. the UFC has their foot on AEW's throat, and the WWE doesn't even have to worry about it now. No. Not that they were worried about it before, but now it's not even
a thought.
It's not even a thought.
No.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I never thought we'd wake up and see this.
No, like I said, we woke up in a parallel universe, different dimension, time shift, Mandela effect.
And people were saying they're worried about. I mean, I guess some of the wrestling fans this morning, it's only been a couple hours since this news came out, but they've been a little worried about jobs, like how many guys are going to maybe get cut. But the UFC runs so many cards. If you go look at what the UFC's roster is and the amount of guys they're comfortable sitting on the UFC roster that only work couple times a year, 3 times a year. Like they have like 250, 300 contracts over on the UFC.
That's huge.
So they're not going to be cutting that many wrestlers. No. Like the bookings are all still there to be done.
There's not that many wrestlers anyways to cut, right?
And the good part about the UFC being in this business is like, I don't know how Dana and Vince are going to collaborate, or I don't know who's going to be responsible for collaboration and then smoothing out all the egos that might not get along. But if there's one thing both those brands know how to do, it's they know how to market quality stuff to fans and not just regurgitate and rehash the same thing over and over again. So they're not going to just cut a bunch of guys from the roster, because the UFC is immediately going to realize that, like, we need to keep this fresh. And fresh means a good revolving door of talent, not the same.
Right. Okay. Well,
talent.
This company just bought these two big fucking sporting companies.
They clearly
why would they cut you? They're going to pour more money.
Yeah, they clearly have a future plan. They don't. This isn't a purchase and a dissolving.
No. This is a purchase and building.
This is a
merger
building,
of two big media companies. Like,
what was I saying? Well, we talked about this how many months ago? I said, Apple, this would be a great investment for you to get the WWE. I said, Netflix, this would be a great investment for you to get the WWE.
Yep.
And who made the move? Not somebody I said.
No.
I never said the UFC.
No.
Because I was thinking other major media outlets that were missing this version of stuff, right? They didn't have something like a large touring company that could book venues and draw live audiences, whether it was, I'm sure there's only a couple, and we don't know them, but I'm sure there's only a couple major like concert touring promoters out there where all stars go through the same.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So Netflix, it would have gave Netflix content, original programming, tons of their own stars. They could have used tons of WWE guys in crossover shows, because WWE guys look like actors, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they very easily, and then you've got notable people where you're going to draw from the WWE audience Netflix would have had and move them right over to your original programming show that Cena's on or that this. But
does Netflix even have $9.8 billion to buy the WWE?
I would imagine any of them could raise money. I'm sure Netflix is all right. The Netflix has had a couple of down years, but I'm sure Netflix, but they just probably don't see it as something that they could have really struck on and
I don't
made
think they
the
can see
money
what they
back.
can do with that.
The UFC clearly, they have an idea of where they're going to make this money back. They're not putting out that kind of money with no game plan.
No, of course. They have a foresight, like 10 years.
Just don't meld it. That would be my one thing. Let's not try to get too many wrestlers for any reason over on the UFC stuff during UFC shows. I don't want kayfabe starting to interrupt real combat sports.
That's the only scary part that could happen.
Like, we already have
you
that.
have like Ultimate Fighter, but you'll have like the WWE guys come in. I bet you're gonna have stuff like that. You don't think so?
No, I don't think Dana would. I think there's guys in the UFC that wouldn't let that happen.
You don't think they would have like
know there
needs training camp?
I think they know there needs to be a separation of church and state. I think the most thing you'll see, and again, this is my opinion, but I think the most thing you'll see is I think there might come a point in time where there's enough guys, or there might already be in professional wrestling, that are interested in the idea of trying to be a mixed martial artist, and you'll see a group of WWE guys, like 12, all go over and do a season of The Ultimate Fighter, where they'll have to train and fight each other, and then two guys will maybe fight on an actual where
Yeah,
they
I don't
earn
even say
their
they would
way.
fight like
But
UFC
you bet-
fighters at all.
But
No,
don't bring guys over to do pro. I don't want to see the Usos cutting promos on Conor McGregor.
You could not see that because that'd be too phony. That's
silly.
That's
really silly.
Conor McGregor already cuts promos, but it's silly the way he kind of cuts.
And the only way I would bring over a UFC guy into the WWE if he wasn't trying to become a full-time competitor. Let's say like Matt Riddle, who's over in the WWE, got kicked out of the UFC for the weed thing. Let's say Riddle wanted to be a full-time WWE guy, and he just
full-timer.
Then that's fine. Then I think there's an integration process where you can very easily bring that guy over. You know, like
sure if they wanted to do it, but don't force it though.
But if you're gonna bring an active guy over, I think the only thing you should do is bring them over as an ambassador, as a guest, not as an athlete who's gonna challenge one.
No, because like you said, you can't have the UFC guy pound the shit out of the fucking WWE
and he would,
guy.
And he would,
right? Because you can't sell that anymore. He just got his ass kicked. So no, I think you'd have it like they'd come where you, like you said, it'd be WWE fighters go there, train like UFC fighters.
Right, a season of The Ultimate Fighter I could see.
Yes,
right. A lot of guys that are kind of
where UFC fighters would teach them how to fight like UFC, like clinches.
Yes,
like stuff like that.
I could see all of that because that's totally. But that wouldn't be on a main card.
No,
where you would have like there's fights going on.
This is an ancillary.
This would be a separate show where we would acknowledge that this is an entertainment / athletic show.
Yes.
So we're seeing, but we're also acknowledging that these guys are on a tier way down here. We're not saying like, oh, yeah, you just came out of the WrestleMania ring and now all of a sudden you're on the same level as Makayev, right?
Yeah,
you're not.
It's not going to be, not going to be.
Yeah, Lesnar could. Yeah. Lesnar's your one guy that could.
He transcends that easily.
He could, because I mean, we all know that we all know that. Yeah. I mean, that's why he beat Almost yesterday, was because Almost fucking, even at 7-3, once Brock got him up for the F5, I mean, the whole audience knew. So, I mean, it was a wrap because it's Brock. And that was another one. People thought Brock was going to lose, right? They thought Almost is going to win. He's this big giant,
No, we talked about this, but no.
I told you, what did I tell you yesterday? I said he doesn't have the Andre vibe. He's been around for a couple of years. He's big, but he ain't.
Exactly.
He's nothing. No. Like, he's big, but nothing. Like, wow, you're big. Like, that's great. You got to put asses in seats. Brock puts asses in seats.
He definitely does.
And Brock's an animal. So Brock, you could move over, but I think he's too young to do, or too fucking old.
Yeah.
I'm too fucking old, apparently. Too old to go do the UFC again, right?
Yeah.
So he's probably not going to, but he could go over there as a credible
commentator
voice, right?
Something like that.
Right. Not that I think he ever would, because he's a pretty antisocial person. I don't think
he likes to be by himself.
He's not going to go do a lot of commentating.
No, probably not.
But it's cool because it brings Brock back into the fold that he belongs in.
Yeah.
Because he belongs in the WWE's fold, but he also belongs in the UFC.
Exactly.
And now he's where he really belongs, because Brock is, I mean, in the last generation, he's basically the epitome of both of those sports. Like, I mean,
when you think about it, he kind of is.
He raised the celebrity.
You can see Brock Lesnar, and when you say WWE,
he raised the celebrity of the UFC, not the other way around. I mean, the UFC.
Oh no! When he came in,
I was heavily invested in.
I think
MMA
everybody. I think the ratings
but like
through the
before
roof.
That, when we're talking when
wrestlers came over to watch that.
When Chuck and Randy were going early Ultimate Fighter seasons and the spin-offs from that, right? When Randy and Chuck are going at it, Franklin's your light heavyweight champion, all Matt Hughes and GSP, that's playing out early on. The early Bisbing, all those guys that came off the first 3 seasons of Tough that ended up being like I mean, you got a list of guys from Sanchez and Florian and Swift.
There's a lot of guys.
There's so many guys from the first couple seasons of Tough that made careers in the UFC because there was such a pick of the litter back then.
Yeah.
Because there was so many regional guys that were talented. You've got all of that. But when Brock came in, the trajectory went to another level.
Yeah.
It took off because he was the first character that kind of transcended, and he was larger than life. He wasn't 170 pounds saying this.
No,
he's a giant. He's a giant gorilla.
Yeah,
like he's the freakiest looking thing that television cameras had seen maybe at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So a terrifying looking human being, and all that talent and all that bravado. We could back it all. So I mean, he really took. So it's cool to have him back in the fold.
It is very, very cool.
Quite the day.
Yeah. All right. Peace.
Bye.